Anchor, which is a podcast voice only recorder, and we ended up having to record. We missed about the first 10 minutes, and then we recorded the rest, and at least managed to salvage the audio
Oh
of
man. So
what was a very unusual guest to have.
so I hit the record button a minute ago because I always like things to be a little bit organic. And so what we're talking about, people are just jumping in right now, and if they're listening to this, is we recorded a good 10 minutes of this conversation, and I looked over and realized none of the lights were on the recorder. So we had to start over again. So it's the beginning of the podcast, and you were just explaining the exact same thing happened to you. And it's the most frustrating thing in the world because it feels like conversations. One of the things I like about podcasts are conversations are like, they're almost like, I don't know what the word is, like snowflakes. Like there's never going to be two again unless it's scripted. And if it's scripted, it kind of sucks. It needs to be
Yep.
kind of organic. And if you and I tried to recreate the 9 minutes that we thought, or I thought I was recording before, it would never turn out the same. It would sound kind of clunky and weird.
I couldn't do it. I can't memorize things. I can't.
So
Couldn't happen.
so we're starting over. So you have to introduce yourself, and we had so earlier, or I guess it was yesterday. I did a Facebook live room thing, and I closed it out, or I thought I did, and I was editing the podcast. I was getting ready to post it, and it's taking time to process, and all of a sudden I got a join request from you, and I'm like, oh shit! So we started another one here. So here we are. Introduce yourself, my dear.
Hello. Well, I am Tamara Linnan. I was Tiara Linnan, growing up, class of '96, there in Hubbardville.
And that's your claim to fame? You went to Smethport?
I mean that's my claim to fame because the fact that I got out of there as a C student and couldn't even tie my shoes, and now I run major tours is a sentiment to what growing up on moonshine really can do for individuals. So
Uh, that's awesome. So, did you
I mean
right
that's my
out?
thought.
Where'd you go right out of high school?
Joined the Navy right out of high school.
Did you really? I didn't know that.
Yep.
So you were
No.
like we said this. I feel like we're recreating a conversation we had like 20 minutes ago. But you were in my sister's grade, so I knew. I don't want to say I didn't know you, like, but I didn't know you in the way that I knew the person that sat behind me in every class. So I knew you as someone that was in my sister's grade, and then when Facebook's kind of a funny thing where you start watching somebody's lives or all these people's lives, and you start seeing what they're doing, and you're like, "Oh, that's interesting." Like as much as everybody bitches about social media lately, I'm very fortunate and feel fortunate that you can get to keep in contact with people and see kind of what they're doing in life. It's super interesting. Like the path. I've had a couple beers tonight. The th is
Good for
are
you.
getting hard to say, but the roads that people go down are never ones that I would expect. If you were gonna write a paper, like if I was gonna sit down in my senior year, and they gave me a list of the everybody in the school and what they're gonna do, I probably would have been wrong 96% of the time. It's super interesting to see where people go, and life kind of bounces them around, and the opportunities or challenges that they face that send them in a different direction. It's super interesting. So
It is, and I like the part that I like about it the most. I think is holding on to that kind of that essence of um, you got a little grit in life, you can get great places, right? So
Mm-hmm.
obviously growing up in Smithport, right? I didn't have good grades, right? I could throw a shot put and I shot pretty good, drank really well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I wrote a lot. I was the editor of the school newspaper. Like I was in band
Mm-hmm.
with your sister. Right, drama club, all that stuff. I wrote all the time. Got in a lot of trouble in English class because all I did was write. I wrote my first book in junior high ish slash high school there. Um, and tanked that. I remember sitting in Coach DeFilippi's office at the time. He was the guidance counselor, which was a great move on high schools across the world, right? Make
Uh-huh.
the high school coach, guiding people's talent to the better world. And I mean, I tanked my SATs, dude. When I say tanked, I'm like, I even got my name wrong. It was so bad. Now I know now I'm dyslexic. Did not get diagnosed with none of that shit in high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I couldn't do math to save my life. It was just I kind of was in that, well, she can be digging ditches. But here's what I say to that: people who dig ditches have union jobs, and those jobs are awesome. So I should have known that right back then. But everything they told me, he said, better join the military because you can't get into college, and if you don't go to college, you can't go anywhere. And now Tony Eminetti, who went to graduated with myself,
Mm-hmm.
we discovered that we lived a few miles apart here in Arizona about 5 years ago
So
because
you
Brian,
guys,
social
that's
media,
that's
Brian,
what's wait. So let's pump the brakes real quick. So you
yep,
graduated what year?
96.
And it was just like 2015 that you realized that Tony lived a few miles away from you.
Yeah, yeah, it
That's
was,
that is the
I think 2014, 15.
that is the craziest thing ever. It's such a small world.
Yeah, it is, and it's crazy because Tony's much like myself, where he was a C student, and
Mm-hmm.
right, the guidance counselor was like, "Go in peace, good luck." Right?
Yeah.
Tony went into the Air Force. Brian Bailey tipped me off that Tony was in the area. We quite literally lived 3 miles apart from each other. It's gonna sound crazy, but we met at In and Out to get caught up.
Mm-hmm.
Got caught up in what each other was doing, and the time I was in 2008, I started my own dispatch center, front office solutions. And back then, voice over IPs weren't stable. And you had to get like DID trunk systems. They were very expensive computers to have a call center in that particular year, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it was really bad overhead. And it was hard to have an appliance to just match that. Had lunch with Tony, found out he's a friggin' software guru. He works at General Dynamics. He automates like spaceships and shit, even though he never, went to college either. He's like
Right.
me, C student, barely getting by. Um, but had been very successfully running his own businesses on the side as well. And him and I got together. He built the software program that our dispatch company uses to this day. Our Front Office Solutions is now a legal nonprofit. We only hire chronically ill veterans or their family members for employment so that if somebody's sick, they don't lose their job.
Mm-hmm.
We co do some marketing together, which I think is where you kind of see some things because I do a lot of celebrity director of operations. Is probably the fastest way to say what I was doing last year. Work with folks like Les Brown. I was his director of operations. He's an inspirational speaker.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I worked with Grant Cardone, Ed Milet. Again, those real estate kind of inspirational speaker guru guys. I help with Steve D. Sims right now. Is a mutual friend and partner on some media things with Tony and I. Tony built some software for some pretty cool people. And so we had a lot of fun. We do a lot of business together. And for two C students that, like last time I was visiting Tony at his house, we were taking a leaf blower and turning it into a t-shirt launcher, right? Which is where, honestly, at the end of the day, the name of my one of my companies is Profitable Shenanigans. And it's kind of just that essence of running around and having a good time. Really, really blessed to work with some of the best minds in business. And I just have a lot of fun. And I know people say, "Well, what do you do?" And I guess the story we talked about earlier didn't go down, but probably the only way to really explain what I do, because I'm fluid. And what I mean by that is, I'm not somebody who could go, "Oh, I do customer service," or, "Oh, well, I think you do marketing." Well, I do for my celebrity clients, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm not in marketing, right? I'm really deadly with hashtags right now, and things like that. And so I'm just, really, really good, and great at bringing in the right team members, right? Like it takes a village. And so the fact that I can pick up the phone and call some of the most brilliant minds out there anywhere, that will help us out, certainly makes me look a lot smarter than I am. But it's about for me about the fluidity. Like I said, I shared earlier, I was horrible at basketball, but I made the basketball team, back there, every year, and it wasn't because I could dribble the basketball or shoot it. It was because I could take it away from anybody. I always knew where the basketball was going, and I would watch body language, and I would just watch different things, and I would get the basketball, and I would feed it to somebody who could make the shot, which is exactly what I do in business. I am
Mm-hmm.
behind the scenes a lot. I am the person who, gets the team to the top of the mountain. And then I pass the ball to whoever can actually make the shot. And so it's kind of weird, and good potty humor, but I'm basically number one in being number two, because I'm not in the spotlight often. I don't like to be, but I have been really blessed to be the driving force behind some amazing products and tours, and um, charities we've helped. Tony and I have helped Chemo Buddies for Life. It's a major nonprofit for cancer, and we helped the president of that actually win the next Impactor, which is a big, big business um, contest, right? It's a big deal out in the entrepreneur world. And Tony and I were the campaign managers, and drove that, that campaign. Just last few months ago, with the work that we do with Steve D. Sims, they were able to raise enough money to save a women's shelter, um, that Tony has supported forever. And so it's a lot of fun to right, be the dumb kids who do pretty good in life, with business, and but we have fun, right? And that's where the whole proper shenanigans thing comes in. And that's it's hard to find that experience out in the real world anymore. And you certainly, usually don't find it, right, 2,000 miles away from where you grew up in BFE. 1,200 people live here, Pennsylvania, right?
Mm-hmm.
For us to be out here, in the big kid world, the big entrepreneur world, because it's definitely not where we were told, or you would expect to see, two kids from Smithport, Pennsylvania would be, when they're in their 40s. So
Right. So here's a couple things. So I'm literally 2 years older than you. So I'm gonna use my vast elderly wisdom here to ask you a couple questions. The first one is,
absolutely.
and I was struggling with this myself earlier this week. Why do you define yourself as a C student from Smithport? Like I've talked to you a couple times now before this, and it seems like a something that's come up a couple times. And I'll tell you why I say this. Because there was a certain point in school for me where I realized, like, a lot of this is bullshit. Because I started working when I was fairly young. And I realized when I was going and doing these jobs, whether it's construction or whatever, that a lot of the things they're teaching you in school, probably never going to use. And so at some point, I sort of quit giving them any credence or weight in what I should spend my time on as a teenager. And it goes against everything that the traditional good student would do. And and same. So through most of the years of my school, I did really good, but somewhere around the 14, 15-year old age, I'm just like, this is all bullshit. Like, I can pick this book up and I can know everything about this book in a night, and they're stretching this out over a whole year. And then after I memorize all this shit, like, not learn things, memorize things, I will never use this again. And if I do run into a situation that I need this again, I can just pick up this book and go, oh, chapter 3, this is how you do that. And at some point during that, I completely was like, I'm out. Like, I'm not spending my time doing this. I'll do anything else. And I don't think as a student that's the best way to go about it, but I feel like it's the best way to go about it as a person. But I struggled for a long time with some shame that at my senior year, when I made it to the end of the year, I graduated, I went to work, and all my friends, all my good friends, went to college. Everybody disappeared. Like, nobody stayed around here. And for some reason, I carried that forward. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, it was a thing that you always were like, I was a, I don't know what I want to say. Like, I'm struggling to find the words, but I hear that in a lot of the things that you're saying. Like, you sort of figured out what life was about long before you were exposed to it after you graduated from college and realized, like, oh shit, life is a lot harder than textbooks and tests. Like, it's a whole different thing. You have to figure out problems as they come, and it's kind of a fluid thing where you're never going to be prepared for it. So I don't know. I don't know if any of that makes sense, but
Well, that makes sense. So I didn't go to college out of high school. I joined the Navy. Um, and so I actually worked at the Circle K pumping gas until I left for boot camp. It was one of those situations where I had wanted to go to college, but my father made too much money for me to get any sort of grants back then.
mm-hmm.
And I couldn't get any student loans or things like that because his income was too high, even though he was not going to help me with college.
Right.
And so I joined the military. I just kind of figured this was how the only way I was getting out of Smithport kind of thing. And I did. It took me 10 years to get my college degree. I did end up with one, but it took me 10 years to do it. And so I did that 10-year plan. I wish I would have learned what you did a little bit sooner. I think it's funny with perspective, right? Like I wish I'd have been a lot stronger than I was after I turned like 17, and um, I was constantly under pressure and getting screamed at because I happened to be really good at throwing the shot put, right?
Mm-hmm.
But and now I know I'm dyslexic, but at the time I didn't, right? And constantly being held after and screamed at, and I don't tell which teachers would stand behind me and smack me in the back of the head every time I got a math equation wrong because I wasn't going to be able to go to districts and throw the shot put because I couldn't pass math class. And they ended up pulling me out and putting me in like these accounting programs. And so I guess for me, feeling like I wasn't smart enough was something I kind of sadly embraced entirely too much. And that's where that resonated when I had the guidance counselor telling me, right, that my only hope was the military and I wasn't smart enough. And who did I think I was, right? Stephen King, because, I would never get a book published. And I've written 30 books, right? And I do pretty well. I have a book right now that just went international bestseller in
Really?
Poland. And
Congratulations.
yeah, it's getting ready to come over here. Thank you, to the United States. And it's funny. I found that out by accident. I got up and I was tagged on a bunch of stuff on LinkedIn, and none of it was in English. And so that was really really exciting. But so for me, so I left at 18, joined the military. Um, very shortly out of boot camp, I got married. Right. I married someone much older than myself who basically behaved and spoke to me exactly like, other people did, right, growing up. And so that wasn't the best marriage, to say the least. By the time I was 23, I was blessed. I had my two daughters. And so I kind of stayed in that immature kind of a loser realm, because I went from a place where I let people tell me I was, make you feel like I was dumb, because I couldn't do math to win their state championships for shot put and stuff. To marrying a guy who told me I wasn't smart enough to balance a bank account, and I'm really really embarrassed to tell you, I was a teen cutter, and until it was 2008 when I finally kind of snapped. Up to that point, I didn't know how to get a bank account. I didn't know how to do anything. I was 100% reliable on people basically telling me I was too dumb to do anything. And then I was really blessed. And my the father of my kids, and God rest his soul, he passed away 2 years ago. Great father, by the way. Just him and I didn't get along because of the age difference. Right? He wanted somebody he could control. I got deployed for almost 4 years straight. And while he was deployed, I went back to college and got my degree. I became a surgical tech and got a job as a civilian contractor on the military base after I got out of the military. So I got out when he got deployed, so that I, wouldn't be somewhere with my two children with their father stationed someplace else. And so I got out of the military, and that was kind of when I started writing again and just kind of trying to figure out, what I wanted to do and all that. And then 2009 landed in Arizona, and not well here now, but traveled so much as an entrepreneur that until COVID, I really was never here. I managed to avoid not being here in the summer, and then the rest is kind of history. Met Tony, and we kind of went off on our adventures, and it was just, I really wish I would have caught on much sooner to you know being that person who was like, yeah, okay, well, college wasn't for me. Right. I'm dyslexic and damn near illiterate. And it's funny, all the number one, like, best selling authors that I know, um, most of them are high school dropouts. They don't know how to do punctuation. They don't, some of the most successful human beings financially on the planet that I've had the pleasure to meet and some of them work with, none of us were good in school, right? And we had something that we had to overcome, which actually kind of scares me in today's society, where every kid gets a trophy and all that kind of stuff. Because if you really really look back, sit down and look at life and go, who do I know that's interesting, or who do I know that truly developed something that was impactful? None of them were people who had it on easy street.
Mm-hmm.
Very few trust fund kids out there becoming Nobel Peace Prize winners and things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or major entrepreneurs, right? But you know, I know people. Steve is one of them. Uh, Dropped out of high school, bricklayer from London, 14 years old. People like Elon Musk write that man big checks. He's a brilliant genius
Mm-hmm.
business person. He has done Elton John's birthday party for the last 10 years. Like, he runs the premier concierge service in the world for people we've never heard of and never will. And he was a bricklayer, and so
So, do you
I
think?
hope as that's crazy. I wonder, I worry about the world about, losing grit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do you think this is something that I think about a lot? A lot. So, do you think that let's just say a past that either you're I don't want to use the word ashamed. I don't know what it is, what that word is, but do you suppose that's the cause or the motivator? So I'm a C student, so I work harder to prove myself as opposed to an A student who goes into it and goes, I'm an A student. Like, obviously, my mind's been uh, certified by the test that I took in high school. Where a C student goes into a situation is like, I have something to prove, and they'll work harder and push through something that your college educated person. So if, let's just say two people, one went to college, one didn't go to college. They end up at the same job the same day. They hired the two people to do this job. Do you feel like the person that went to college would feel some superiority over the other person because they have what they would probably explain as better knowledge and training, and the other person would have something to prove, like, I'm gonna outwork that fuck, like, I'm gonna be better than them, I'm smarter, I can do it regardless of what the paper says. So I feel like there's a weird dynamic there that that you hear the stories over and over again about the people that dropped out of college or dropped out of high school or didn't uh, seek higher education that made it. Do you think there's some drive there that doesn't exist in the people that went to college, and to maybe to their detriment, that if you had the education and the drive you would have went farther, or do you think it's drive only?
No, that's a very good question. I've seen both sides of it. I have seen, um, like we said, right, the person who is illiterate, hated school, didn't do good, right? That
Mm-hmm.
Gary Vaynerchuk is a great example of that. That man is run, media haven. And he was 100% driven by screw you, right? I will
Right.
not be serving your
Yep.
fries when you go skiing, kind of thing.
Yep.
But I, and but I've also seen the other side of it where, because this was me, and it has been a lot of other people for a while. For a while, I allowed the fact that I was a C student make me feel less worthy, so I didn't try as hard. And then again, I have seen very arrogant college educated kids, who, did think they were better, than you, right? The
Mm-hmm.
amount of military officers, I was a hospital corpsman, that came right out of med school and were told that, everybody had to salute them, that I had to teach how to start an IV, and I had to teach how to do a lot of things, is is obnoxious, quite frankly. And so I really does think it, for me, looking back, I think it just comes down to personality, or typically the more arrogant people who have to hold on to their diploma, or they hold on to the fact that, you better call me doctor. Um,
Mm-hmm.
those types of people have the lowest self esteem I have ever seen in my entire life.
Yes.
Um, and they're afraid to fail. And so they hang on to these things, because, they're not necessarily confident that they can, get through it. And, you know, for those of us who have realized that failing is the only way you get anywhere decent, and you embrace that, that's where major change comes from.
You just said the
And so
best.
it's hard to answer.
You just said the best thing in the world, because I was going to say
Hmm.
that you said the doctors and these people are afraid to fail. And what I was going to say is what they don't realize is we're all failures. Like, we all fail more times than we win. I don't care who you are. If you're in business or you're doing anything that's hard, The amount of fails versus wins is overwhelming. And if you don't have the grit, as you said earlier, or somebody put it in your head that if you went to college, you're always going to win, you're never going to make it. Like, getting your dick pounded in the dirt on a regular basis is part of life. And I feel like a
Yeah,
lot of people are looking for that easy street, like it's like a math equation. If I get good grades and I go to college and then I get into the right job, everything's going to be easy peasy. And it's not. Like, life's fucking hard. It's really hard. Super hard. And shit's going to come sideways that you don't even realize.
it is. I agree, and I think, um, but the hell do I know? You know, the average high school student is still a senior in high school when they turn 18, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're constantly telling these kids, like, you're a kid, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. Oh, you're 18, you're an adult. What the fuck do you want to do with your life, right? That we stop telling kids to go out and try things and taste things and try. You know, we stop telling people to live life and figure out what you're good at
Mm-hmm.
accidentally, right? Like, if I would have went to college and done all that stuff, or stayed on that path, there is zero chance I'd be doing what I do and love so much for a living right now, right?
True.
Like,
Yes.
I couldn't have ever imagined me being where I'm at. And so I think we stop putting, it's gonna sound strange, but like, we need to go back to the good old days where, hey, you're 12, you want to be a doctor, you're off living with the doctor guy for 10 years or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good old fashioned experience. We give we're teaching, we taught people in society that, reading the book, not going to do it, right? Is made you more competent. But and I will tell you, to this day, I was a hospital corpsman in the military, and I was a surgical tech. Damn good at it. I've done many surgeries. I have done a lot of things. I got out of the military, couldn't get into nursing school, wasn't good enough. I didn't have chemistry grades. I could do that job, and I think, I mean, now that the economy's kind of going the way that it is, I really do hope that we're trying to, get some common sense back to the point of, right. Everybody learns differently, and that, something like you said, somebody reading a book and getting a piece of paper does not make them a better doctor, right?
No.
I've seen a lot of student doctors who had the best, bedside manner. I have seen people be at the top of their class as a doctor, and the first time they saw blood, pass out. Um, right, and they
So,
couldn't get a job. And so I think we got to get back down to the core of letting, we kind of got lucky, right? We were out there hunting and fishing and figuring shit out pretty, early in life. And we had at least a little sense of, a little bit of what we could do, right? We were taught to respect experiences. And now we hide kids from them, right?
mm-hmm.
I don't know if they did this to you when you were in school, but the game commission would come in, right, and do the hunter safety courses.
Yep.
Um, in school, you know, uh, there was a loaded weapon in every room of my house growing up, in the vehicle everywhere. Never once were we the kids who were curious, right?
Right. Right.
We still had fist fights, but it's because we were raised to respect
Right.
experience,
Right.
if that makes sense, right? You got to learn how to clean this gun so you can eat. Like, we were
Yep.
taught that things were tools, and it was what you did with those tools that determined where you got in life. And somewhere along the way, we stopped telling people that. We started telling them this piece of paper is the only way you can make it, instead of saying this is a tool for where you want to go.
Well, I think that we've confused two things. So when you get that piece of paper,
Huh?
it qualifies that your mind is able to do the calculations required for the job, but it does not qualify that you have the ability to do it. There's two different things between knowing how to throw a baseball and throwing a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. Like there's two different things there. Like you can understand the mechanics of it. You could study it all day, every day. You could pass all the tests and understand why a 100-mile-an-hour fastball can be thrown and never be able to throw it. And there's places for all those people. But we confuse that if you went in, this is where I'm kind of down on the self-help world a little bit. I can explain to you why Nolan Ryan was the best pitcher ever. And I don't know. That's the first baseball player that comes up. I don't follow baseball, but that's what I'm saying. Like
I'll take your word for it because I don't follow it either. So.
right. But what I can sit down and say he was an amazing pitcher and give you all the science why he
Yeah.
was. And if I passed every test on why he was the best pitcher ever, doesn't mean I'm the best pitcher ever. Like there's some physical ability or some other
Yeah.
thing that makes you the greatest. And that's one of the things that I feel like is missing in all of school period from kindergarten to college, that we're qualifying your mind as being able to do this, but it doesn't mean that you can. It doesn't mean that you have the ability. It means you understand it, but it doesn't mean you are going to kill it. And people, I feel like, confuse those two things. And the older I get, the more I look at that kind of thing, and I'm like, oh, people who can do it are more important than people that can understand it. You can do it. You could throw a fastball and not understand the mechanics of why you throw that fastball, but you can do it just because you physically can. And you're better off than the person that passed all the tests that could. There's nobody in the Baseball Hall of Fame that passed all the tests of why the mechanics of the fastest fastball work, if that makes any sense.
No, that makes total sense. And I agree. And first of all, I'm with you on the team. Some of the shit, self help shit is horrible. But two things. I actually had a conversation. So I work a lot in suicide prevention as well. That really, at the end of
Mm-hmm.
the day, is what drives me. I was a teen cutter. I was 8 years old when my mother took her life. And I have lost several family members, and I have one right now that we will lose very soon after their forced suicide attempt. And so that mental health thing kind of ran through my family, but it also ran through from the small mindedness of small towns. Right, we were Catholic, so she was in hell. 1987, mental health wasn't a thing, right? She was just this weak, horrible, selfish
Yep.
person,
Yep.
type thing. And I was talking to one of the top, well, on paper, one of the top rated childhood trauma psychologists out there, right? They've written all the books, they're on all the panels for, all the things in all the world, right? And I was talking to this individual the other day before we were going to do a podcast, and she finally said, she was like, you know what? She was asking a little bit about why I do what I do, right? And I talked about my mom, and really at the end of the day, that's the reason I do everything that I do is I have determined I'm going to end suicide, right? And I need smart
Mm-hmm.
people who have great voices, and that's why I work with a lot of the people that I do. They can help me reach more people, and and this is what she said. Now um, and this podcast episode will air, so people will get the name right. I'm not talking out of school, but if they want to know who it is, they're gonna have to come listen to the podcast episode. Shameless plug right there. But she said, I don't understand people who are depressed. I don't understand teen cutters. I don't. She said, I do not understand a place where you don't want to live anymore. And that, and so I stopped and I realized again, kind of like what we were talking about before, right? She's considered the grand poobah out there on depression and mental health. No, no, never been there. No clue how it works. And
Uh huh.
I got kind of quiet and I said, well, I'm going to explain something to you. I said, first of all, I thank the Lord above. I am so very happy that you don't get it. Like the fact that you do not understand, right? The hell of that um, is a great thing, and you should embrace that. I said, and I'm really glad we're having this conversation. I said because that's a lot of the problem with mental health, right? We're dealing with people who never been there. There's a reason why you join Alcoholics Anonymous. Your sponsor is an alcoholic, right? Do I have? Yes, I have a degree now. I had 10 years to get it. In a moment's time with my master's to be a counselor, but I can tell you how the brain of a teen cutter works in a nanosecond. I can spot them 20 miles away, um, and can discuss things with them in a way that the top national right brain out there, for every degree known to man, can't. And again, I think we just gotta be able to have those honest conversations about understanding, like you said, right? She's read it all, she's done it all, she knows it all, she can spout it out. Um, but she's never been depressed a day in her life. She's never had to, you know, walk into the fires of hell, stare Satan straight down, and get back out, and not know how hard that is to do.
She read the book about throwing a fastball, but she's never thrown a fastball. Back
A
to what I
day in
was
her
saying.
life, but she's
Okay.
in the fastball Hall
So
of Fame, right?
I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm a little
Yeah.
hesitant to ask it, but have you? And I'll tell you why in a second. But how close? And obviously, your mother committed suicide. How close have you ever come to being in that state?
Oh, to the point where I had cleaned my house, put my will on the table, made sure that my kids weren't going to find my body, and grabbed a bottle of alcohol and a razor blade, and was going to leave this planet. And, and I'm obviously, it's a hard thing to admit, and it left one hell of an impression on my oldest daughter. She's 22, and she's now navigating just like I had to. Right? She called me one day screaming like, "You were gonna commit suicide. You were gonna leave me." Like she couldn't understand why she wasn't enough, and I had basically done to her, right, what my mom had done to me, except for I just didn't actually do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believed I was destined for that. Um, so again, part of me not taking full responsibility soon enough in life for the way I allowed things to affect me was after my mom passed away. We were not allowed to speak her name in our home. I never saw a photo of her again. And I couldn't tell you to this day what my mom sounded like. It's just been in the last few years I managed to find photos of her by Facebook, going into chat groups and the Smithport groups and finding people she went to school with who would send me photos. Right? The Catholic Church at that time said she was in hell and they wouldn't do her funeral. The Catholic Church has since changed their stance on mental health. But when you're 8 years old, that's pretty powerful
Right.
that your mom was this horrible thing. And I was her only daughter. And my father constantly told me I was just like her and I was weak minded. And so I sadly embraced for a very long time. I really just thought that that's what I was supposed to do. And that was like all I was
Mm-hmm.
going to be. And I very openly talk about this. Actually, the death date of my mom. She's been gone now 35 years. She was only here for 33 years, right? Um, and the day I turned 34 was the hardest day of my life because I felt like I could never get to know my mom, right? Like I had more experiences than her, and it was
Mm-hmm.
difficult to do. And so for a very long time, I was in the mindset that that's what was expected and that's what was going to happen. And it damn near did a few times. And when I started speaking on stages for suicide prevention, right, my opening line just used to be, you know what, my mother committed suicide, and I am a mother that almost committed suicide, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have a daughter who remembers that her mother almost committed suicide, and talked about right? Passing down that legacy. It wasn't my mom probably did have some sort of mental illness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're talking 1987 in Smith, we know she wasn't getting any help, right?
Yep.
She was 20 years younger than my dad. It was a toxic shit show from day one. She was like 15 or 16 when she got pregnant with my oldest brother RJ, who is 5 years older than me, so a couple years older than yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think he graduated at Smithport like 90. I was in seventh grade when he graduated, so
Yep.
I just entered seventh grade when RJ left for
Yep.
the
He
the
was
mil-
he was
the
3 years
military.
older than me, I think.
Okay, yeah, and so he never had biological children. Neither did my younger brother Sean. Um, and I very openly speak about this, and they know. I've already gotten these angry phone calls when they heard my podcast episodes. But my younger brother Sean was 21 and he got a vasectomy. And I said, "Why the hell would you get a vasectomy at 21?" And he said, "The dysfunction stops here." Um, and that just kind of clicked, and it really, really made me sad, and it made me want to look at things in a different way. That my entire family was just so dead set that we were this miserable curse that we should no longer, like, after my father is gone. My dad's family line ends, right? His sons didn't have kids. I had two daughters, right? There's that legacy. I have two male cousins, Logan and Timmy. They graduated there, but all in essence, right? My family did everything they could to ensure that our way we thought, didn't get passed on.
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, and there was a better answer, right? Like, they could have had kids and decided not to be that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I had to do in the last few years, is go, you know what, instead of um physically committing suicide, how can the book that actually went bestseller overseas coming out is called Letters to Nancy, and it's about my mom and that transition. And basically for me, it was, I kept going, how do I commit suicide without physically dying? Right. And so for
Mm-hmm.
me, that was getting rid of the parts of me that thought I had to die, the parts of me that were ashamed to mention my mother's name, the parts of me that, were told that psychology was a pseudoscience. Right. And for me, and thank God I got to do that. Right. I considered the fact that, and the subtitle of the book is, like my mother, and all intents and purposes, I also did commit suicide, but I just killed those parts of me um, that had those horrible toxic thoughts, and realized they were wrong, and that the best thing I could do um, for my mom's memory and that legacy, um, as long as I'm here, is to try to change that, thought process, that unless it's some mental illness that you have no control over, right? We know there's bipolar. There are things you can't help mental illness wise, but 9 times out of 10, depression, suicide, those things are not related to a mental illness. And with behavioral changes and lifestyle changes and stuff, you could live an amazing life, right?
True. Yes.
And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. So
So, two things. The first is, I always feel like when you approach the subject of suicide, most people are like, "I could never do that." Like, it's just this weird taboo that um, I don't even know how to describe it. But most people, there's been several people around here that have committed suicide in the past few years, and
yep.
the my friends are like, why would that person do that? And how could it be so bad, and all that stuff. So I'm gonna back up a little bit in comparison to what you just said. Was my upbringing and growing up. My parents were normalish. They stayed together. There's like I had a really good life, we'll say. And we can pick out our little qualms about things that maybe weren't perfect, but overall, compared to most people, oh, excuse me, I had a really good life. I had a really good childhood, parent wise, and I had a really good teenage years, and afterwards, everything was roses, maybe the best that you could ask for. But there have been days, and I say this on a regular basis. If my shower head could talk, it would have me committed. Because in the past 20 years, there's multiple, like endless amounts of days where I'm like, fuck it, I don't want to live anymore. Like, fuck this, I don't want to do this. It's too hard. It's impossible. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. It's mostly surrounding business stuff for me. But like, I fucked the world up. There's no way out of this. How I'm going to get through this? I would rather not live than face another day of this and fucking the crushing, chest smashing anxiety of it all. And I had what I would say, good childhood, like all the good stuff. And there's at some point through that I realized, like, shit, I can't imagine being somebody that has a click less than that, let alone 10 clicks less. Like, your mother committed suicide when you said you were 8. That's how old my daughter is right now. I can't even fucking imagine trying to explain that to my daughter. Like, I don't even know that there's any words that I could use. There's any way. Like, before we started the earlier podcast, she was having a meltdown because she couldn't attend a YouTube of her favorite Roblox person who was going to give away $1,000,000 at 2 a.m. in the morning tonight. So, like, in 15 minutes from now.
Which YouTuber?
What's that?
Which YouTuber?
I have no idea. I don't know. But she's having a fucking meltdown. I don't know what it was, but so she.
Find out because I might know them. We can have her talk to somebody at a decent hour.
All right. Well, maybe we can work that out. But what I'm saying is, like, she's having a meltdown because a person she doesn't know is going to give away something at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I don't know how you would approach the subject, and this is what I'm trying to say, of, oh, your mom, she killed herself last night. Like, it seems like such, like, an impossible thing to explain to any person, let alone an 8-year-old. And then how that affects you going forward in life. And that's what I'm trying to say. Like, there has been multiple times in my life where I'm like, dude, I'm fucking checking out. Like, I'm not gonna get through this. And I had a great childhood. Like, I don't have any, like, I got bullied a lot when I was a kid, but that is the worst. Like, I'm good. And then to reach an age where you realize there's a whole spectrum of everything that happened that's way worse than that. I don't even know the words to use. Like, I start to look at people and go, oh my God, these people are incredibly strong-willed people to, like you just said, that's my destiny. That's who I am. I didn't have any of that. Like, and I was on the brink a few times, and I don't know how you do it. You're an incredibly strong person, and that's I don't know if I'm expressing this right, but I look at people like you and I'm like, Jesus, this person is like one of the strongest willed people I know on this earth. I don't know if that makes sense, but
It does. Well, and I'm humbled. I appreciate you saying that, because I certainly don't feel that way, right? Most of the time, I've had those days where right, same thing, right? Like I'm done. I think really at the end of the day, um, being the C student is what saves me, right? Because I'm just too stupid to fucking quit anything, right? But I would submit to you. But here's the thing. I really didn't know I had a dysfunctional childhood until I left for the military, right?
True.
And other
Yes.
people told me.
Yeah.
Other people didn't understand why I was deathly afraid of my father, and why, right? I was in the Navy, and if I wasn't like in my room as a grown ass adult by 10 p.m., this motherfucker's calling security, right? Like I didn't. That was the biggest shell shock. So I would tell you, um, my mother passing away was much harder on my older brother. He was 16, right? So he had all those memories. I was like 8, and my younger brother was like 6. So, right. So, after my mom passed away and we were living in Florida, my dad moved us back up to Smithport, and I don't view my childhood as horrible. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
was in band and I did all those things. My mom was just something we never spoke of. And I really didn't realize till I was an adult what impact that made, because you know how big Smithport is
Mm-hmm.
not, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows everything. And when I became public about the work that I do in suicide prevention, which I've been doing since I was 13, I've volunteered for suicide hotlines and things like that since I was 13 years old. Right. And I was speaking on stages long before it was a popular thing to do. Right. And, when I got out of the Navy for a while, when I did come back to Macon County, right, I was working over at the YWCA women's shelter, and the Starving Dog brand and the things that I do now all stem from those experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't have a bad childhood per se, right? Um, but I was depressed. I was suicidal. I was morbidly obese after I got out of the military. I drank like a fish. Like, right, I had a great job. I had the like I had everything on paper, the 2.2 kids, and the husband, and the Harley
Mm-hmm.
Davidsons, and all that. And I I hated my life. I hated my life, with everything. And that's a bad way to go. And so I guess, I didn't view my childhood as horrible. It was just, we didn't deal with that, right? We didn't.
Right.
I remember, um, I, I entered a poetry contract test. I think I was in the 8th grade, and I wrote, writing. Was before I started cutting myself. Writing was how I kind of escaped. I had horrible nightmares as a kid. Like, I used to have dreams of like being in a graveyard and my mom pulling me down and trying to kill me. Like, I
Mm.
had shit Stephen King couldn't have written if he wanted to, type nightmares. And nothing was ever done about it. And I wrote a poem, and it's called Satan's Games. Now, it's not graphic. It's not one of those like disturbing, oh God, we're about to shoot, but it's very powerful. And to know that I was like 11 when I wrote that, right? You realize, even to this day, when people read that poem or I perform it, the audience goes dead silent, right? Um, and so when I submitted that at Smithport, they called my dad and they were like, "You got to get her counseling," right? Like, and they tried to start a counseling thing, because at the time one of the Christ, I feel horrible because we were in school together, but they moved to Ohio. The Leet girls, their dad had a
Mm-hmm.
heart attack and passed
Yeah.
away while we were in
Yeah.
school. And so they were going to bring in a counselor for the kids who had lost their parents. And my dad said, absolutely not. Um, and I stopped writing because every time I like wrote, I got in a lot of trouble, like a lot of trouble. Right. And people ask, right, I used to be very angry. I didn't speak to my dad for like 10 years, very angry with him over things. But now, like, when you really heal, you get empathetic. And I go, holy shit. Well, I mean, obviously he wasn't set up for success, right? Same thing. He married somebody, 20 years younger than him. So there's an issue there, right?
Mm-hmm.
His wife left him with you know, 3 kids on his own. How must he feel? And um, and so I kind of got over that bitterness at my dad when I realized I truly believe at the end of the day he was just trying to play the hand dealt to him the best way that he could, and for him that was just not to acknowledge it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and move on. And I don't think he did that from a harmful place. Like I really don't believe, right, that he was trying to cause the amount of mental health harm is what was caused there.
No,
Because
and
again, we're talking 1980s. You know, AIDS was important, not mental health.
true. And then this was going to be the second thing I was going to say about all this stuff. And as you get older, you start to compare the age you are versus the age that you remember your parents were. So, like you said, you made to 32 or 33, and you're like, my mom checked out at that time. And you can understand life in a way that maybe you didn't understand when you were 8 or 10 or 12 or 20. And same thing, I look at a lot of my life and I look at my parents or other people that were older than me, and I realize at 45 that that most people don't know what the fuck they're doing to start with. Like they're just
Exactly.
they're just listless ships at sea, just getting nudged around by the endless waves of life. You know what I mean? Like they don't know what the fuck they're doing. But you look at your parents like they have all the answers, and you don't look at them as like people. You look at them also almost like as the 10 Commandments that God handed down, that everything's figured out, that like it's set in stone. And then when you start to realize like, oh shit, there are people. Like there were like when I look at my 30-year-old dad versus my 30-year-old self, I'm like, shit. Like I didn't even I didn't deal with the shit he dealt with, let alone the 40-year-old version or the 45-year-old version. So I look at my dad all the time and I think about the my life now versus his life now, and it kind of you kind of start to draw parallels if you're a thinking person about like what were they thinking at that same age when this was going on or that was going on, and then you start to look back and you're like, oh fuck, like it was a lot harder than I thought it was, and it seems like they should have been paying all the attention to me, but there might have been like 30 other things going on that they were dealing with that you couldn't even begin to fathom. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Well, yeah, because I mean, back then, like parents kept adult stuff to adults, right? Like growing
Yep.
up, we weren't allowed to step foot. Never step foot in my dad's bedroom, right? There was adult conversations they had that we were, sent off for. And then I sit now, so I'm 43 right now, and my dad was like 45 when I was born, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so now let's do that, right? I'm going, okay, I'm 43.
Yep.
My children are now almost 22 and 20. Dude, if I had a baby, I have friends who having their first kid, or they're having little kids who graduated with high school, and I'm like, I'm out. I couldn't do it,
Right.
right? Like,
Yep.
right.
Yep.
So like you said, look back. I mean, my dad didn't play with us, right? Like he was going to the particle board plant and he was paying bills and right and doing all that, and it was definitely a different, a type of thing. And so, again, as you say, that backwards perspective of I I couldn't imagine the crap. I mean, if I had to have somebody handed me, and he had and his wife was gone, right, and he had 3 kids.
Yep.
Well, Smithport wasn't exactly the place where we weren't getting in trouble. Holy crap, right? I think it was hilarious. I don't know if you remember this, how um, they didn't want a game room on Main Street because it was going to bring marijuana,
Yes.
drugs
Yes.
into Smithport. And Tony Eminetti and I and Brian Bailey were like in the woods with firearms blowing shit up,
Uh huh.
right? And it was just hilarious how they fought so hard not to give us a pool table on Main Street when we were stealing booze and running around the woods with firearms like friggin',
Right.
oh, that,
The
that kind of stuff. And
the
if you look back,
best thing would be if you
um,
were around a pool table on Main Street, like, or a pinball machine or anything. If you were on Main Street and observed versus doing whatever popped into your mind,
yep,
it seems like the strangest thing in the world.
it does. And I guess I don't understand it here. Oh, because Christ, back then, like, and I know because God love my younger brother who got arrested for it 90 million times. Um, right, the biggest fear they had was us getting a hold of, fake marijuana or marijuana itself, right? Look at that world
Right.
compared to now,
Hmm.
right?
You know what's funny about
And and that stuff.
marijuana now is the amount of people that smoke that are on the down low is a staggering amount of people. I have been shocked in the past few years. And I'm just going to come out and say, I don't mind partaking every once in a while. I never, when I was younger, a strict Catholic boy like I was, a little of the wine, but never any of the weed, is where I was. But as I get older, the amount of people that smoke is astounding that this is still an illegal thing. Like it's the weirdest thing to me in the world. And then
I get it.
what's also weird to me is like I know a lot of my friends who will drink and become total assholes. Like you don't want to be around them. You're like, "Oh shit. Every time Jeff has a few shots, like we don't want to be around him." But I don't know anybody that smokes a joint and then you're like, "Oh shit." Like he just keeps wanting to give me hugs. Like it's never a
Right,
problem.
they're not out when people. No, I get it, right? Like we have that friend who was like, none of my pot smoking friends have ever called me at 2 a.m. Like, hey,
Right, right.
when you put me like that Main Street, and you got 10 grand, come get me. Like,
Yes.
sorry, I'm on a podcast. In another country. So sorry, I got too loud for my friend I'm staying with,
Uh,
and so like those that phone calls never come.
right.
I never tried marijuana until I was an adult because that was like my father, right? And I believed him. He's like, you could do a lot of things. You could murder somebody, I help you bury the body, but if you do drugs, I will kill you, kind of thing. So
No.
I never got into that. I I have tried marijuana now, and sadly, I actually had a horrible allergic reaction to it.
Did you really?
And I had to do the EpiPen in the leg. I have a lot of allergies. Oh yeah,
Really?
bad, bad,
Oh.
bad allergies. Yeah, damn near went to anaphylaxis. But I'm allergic to a lot of weird things. But and the nuance with that as well is medical marijuana is legal in the state of Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if I were to get my medical marijuana card here, I would lose my right to purchase firearms here,
Yeah, the same thing in Pennsylvania.
which I have friends who the VA mailed them morphine every single month, right? And their firearms, aren't at risk. But
Right,
if you
right.
smoke medical marijuana, you have to check the box that you're addicted to drugs, basically, and you can't carry in Arizona.
Strange times. Strange times. Well, my friend, it is 2 o'clock in the morning here, and
Yeah, my roommate's about to knife me. So
is she? All right. Well, I
yeah,
appreciate
yeah,
all
she
this
got COVID, so
conversation.
she.
What? What did you
I
say?
said, her and I both currently have COVID, so
Are you feeling like shitty, or you just tested positive?
I off and on. She's had it longer than me, but yeah, I feel like I have pneumonia, but I've had bigger and badder diseases try to kill me more often, but it doesn't feel awesome
Mm-hmm.
at all. Again, you get to go to Walmart, right? And so it's funny. I travel all over the world, and you know, my friend who worked, at Walmart came and gave us COVID. So
Mm.
good times there.
Happens.
But yeah, we're doing good. So we can kind of rest. And it's midnight here. So
All right. Well, thank you very much. I loved all your perspective. I love you as a human, and we'll do this again sometime.
no, I appreciate that. We got to get Tony on. He was just back there for the holidays, and we will be there. I would love for you to come check it out. So last July, when COVID kind of first hit, we were supposed to be filming in Smithport. Um, Netflix is doing a documentary on the Starving Dog Action Pack and my mom and stuff, and so they postponed a lot of that filming because of COVID. So this summer, we're gonna be coming back out there, and we're actually going to be filming in Smithport, and go to where my mom's grave is and stuff like that. So we'll definitely be popping into McKean County a few times here. uh, Tony and I, and it'd be nice to see some folks that I haven't seen in a really long time.
Well, hit me up. We'll do something.
That sounds good.
It sounds
Sounds good, my friend. Well, thank you for having me. I was just pushing buttons and didn't plan on winding up on a podcast.
right. Well, happy Thursday, my
I was
dear.
like, yes, sir. Thank you. We'll chat soon, my friend.
All right. Have a good
All right,
night.
bye.
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 See ya. I was slow hitting that button. I thought I could hit it faster, but it's very late.